Germany did not invent the tank. Germany did not invent the radio. Germany did not even invent the concept of rapid mechanized warfare. And yet, Germany used all three together to conquer France in 46 days, Poland in 27, the Low Countries in less than 3 weeks. The generals of Europe had spent decades preparing for a war of trenches, attrition, and static lines, and Hitler's Wehrmacht simply drove straight through them. But here's what most people never consider. The same doctrine that handed Hitler half of Europe was later turned against Germany with devastating precision. Not by a general who studied in Berlin, but by a profane pistol-carrying American from San Gabriel, California. What you're about to see isn't just a story about tanks and battles. It's a story about an idea, how it was born, how it spread, and how it was ultimately used to dismantle the machine that created it. But before we get there, 4 questions demand answers. Why did France, with an army larger than Germany's, collapse in 46 days? How did Patton advance an entire army 400 miles across France in less than a week, faster than any comparable force in the history of mechanized warfare? What flaw inside Blitzkrieg made it not just beatable, but reversible? And why do military academies still study one specific week in August 1944, as the moment the doctrine turned on itself? The answers begin in the 1930s, not on a battlefield, but inside a German staff college where a radical idea about speed was about to rewrite the rules of modern war. The word Blitzkrieg, lightning war, was actually coined not by German generals, but by Western journalists scrambling to describe what they were witnessing and couldn't explain. The doctrine itself grew from a synthesis of ideas developed across multiple decades and multiple nations. British theorists J.F.C. Fuller and Basil Liddell Hart had written extensively about mechanized warfare throughout the 1920s. The Germans read them carefully. Their own General Heinz Guderian built on those foundations and added a critical ingredient: radio. Every German tank in 1940 carried a two-way radio set, a detail that sounds minor until you understand what it meant operationally. French armor was often superior in armor thickness and firepower, but French tank commanders communicated by flag signal and courier. The result was that German panzer units could receive updated orders, redirect toward breakthroughs, and exploit gaps in real time, while French commanders were still waiting for written dispatches. Speed wasn't primarily about engine power. It was about the speed of decision. And in 1940, Germany had a 30-minute advantage in every engagement that compounded into national collapse. But Blitzkrieg wasn't just about radios and tanks. Its true engine was a deliberate assault on the enemy's ability to think clearly under pressure. And that psychological dimension is where it becomes genuinely disturbing. Blitzkrieg was designed to create paralysis before it created destruction. The Ju-87 Stuka dive bomber was equipped with a Jericho trompete, a wind-driven siren mounted on its fixed landing gear, specifically engineered to produce a shrieking wail during attack dives. It had no military function beyond psychological terror. It warned defenders the bomb was coming and gave them nothing useful they could do about it. Meanwhile, German armored columns didn't advance on a broad front the way World War I doctrine prescribed. They punched through a single narrow point, in 1940, the heavily forested Ardennes, which French planners had incorrectly deemed impassable for armor, and then fanned outward behind enemy lines, targeting fuel depots, command posts, and communication hubs rather than frontline troops. The goal wasn't to destroy the French army outright. It was to sever it from its own leadership. Cut off from orders and supplies, even intact French divisions became combat ineffective within days. When German forces reached the English Channel on May 20, 1940, just 10 days after crossing the Belgian border, they hadn't defeated the French army. They had simply made it irrelevant. Understanding how Blitzkrieg worked at this level of mechanical detail makes the next question almost uncomfortable. Why did it take the Allies nearly 4 years to figure out how to replicate it? And who finally did? Patton had studied German operational doctrine before most American officers knew it existed. By 1944, commanding the U.S. Third Army in France, he was prepared to exploit it, but his opportunity came from an unexpected source: a German mistake. Following the Allied breakout at St. Lo in late July 1944, Hitler personally ordered a counterattack westward at Mortain, against the advice of his own field commanders. The order exposed the entire German 7th Army's southern flank. Patton recognized immediately what this meant. Rather than pivoting to reinforce against the counterattack, he accelerated eastward and then swung north, driving toward Argentan with the explicit intent of encircling the German force entirely. What followed was the Battle of the Falaise Pocket, and it demonstrated that Patton had internalized Blitzkrieg's core logic better than most of its practitioners. He wasn't chasing the German army. He was driving past it, cutting off its retreat, and letting geography do the killing. Between August 12 and 21, 1944, roughly 50,000 German troops were captured and an estimated 10,000 killed inside the pocket, the Wehrmacht's single largest defeat on the Western Front. The Falaise Pocket proved Patton could think like Guderian. But what happened in the weeks that followed revealed something even more remarkable, and more logistically improbable than almost anything else in the entire war. After Falaise, Patton's Third Army executed what military historians now regard as one of the most audacious operational movements in modern warfare. Between August 26 and September 1, 1944, 6 days, Third Army advanced approximately 400 miles across France, from the Loire Valley to the Meuse River. To place that in context, Napoleon's fastest-moving corps, considered a marvel of 19th-century mobility, averaged roughly 15 miles per day on good roads. Patton's armor was averaging over 60 miles per day across a partially destroyed French road network. The mechanics behind this were not glamorous. Third Army's quartermaster units ran what became known informally as the Red Ball Express, a dedicated one-way truck convoy circuit that eventually involved over 6,000 vehicles moving 12,500 tons of supplies daily. Fuel was the absolute limiting factor. An M4 Sherman tank consumed approximately 1.7 gallons of gasoline per mile. At peak operational tempo, Third Army's armored units required roughly 400,000 gallons of fuel every single day. When that supply line began to strain in early September, Patton's advance didn't slow, it stopped almost overnight. The army that had just crossed France in a week was halted not by German resistance, but by an empty fuel gauge. That fuel crisis forced a brutal strategic choice that altered the final shape of the war, and the decision made in those September days still generates intense historical debate today. Supreme Allied Commander Dwight Eisenhower faced a problem with no clean answer in September 1944. Allied logistics could not simultaneously sustain a broad advance across the entire front. A choice had to be made: concentrate all available fuel and supply behind one army and drive deep into Germany, or advance on multiple axes and accept slower, more methodical progress across the board. British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery argued aggressively for a single concentrated thrust, his thrust, northward through the Netherlands and into the Ruhr industrial region. Patton, simultaneously, was demanding priority for a drive through the Saar corridor. Eisenhower chose neither fully, adopting instead what he called the broad front strategy, advancing across multiple sectors without concentrating decisive resources behind any one. Historians remain genuinely divided on whether a concentrated thrust could have ended the war in Europe before winter 1944. What is not in dispute is what actually happened. The broad front strategy allowed Germany time to reconstitute defensive lines along the Siegfried fortifications, set the conditions for the catastrophic Allied intelligence failure at the Battle of the Bulge in December, and extended the European war by approximately 5 additional months, at a cost of hundreds of thousands of additional casualties on both sides. But even as that strategic debate played out at the command level, Patton was already doing something on the ground that quietly answered the original question we opened with: what flaw inside Blitzkrieg made it reversible? Blitzkrieg's fatal internal contradiction was the same quality that made it so terrifyingly effective: its dependence on continuous momentum. An army advancing at 60 miles per day outstrips its own supply chain, generates flanks it cannot adequately protect, and requires command decisions of extraordinary quality at every level, simultaneously. When those conditions held, it was unstoppable. When any one of them failed, fuel, flank security, or command coherence, the entire system became brittle in a way that a slower, more methodical army never would. Hitler, by 1944, had compounded that brittleness by centralizing tactical decisions in his own headquarters, 800 miles from the front, and demanding offensive action when operational logic demanded withdrawal. Patton understood instinctively that the doctrine required not just speed, but disciplined speed, speed with fuel, speed with intelligence, speed with a protected rear. What the German army built in the 1930s was arguably the most sophisticated military instrument of its era. What Patton demonstrated in the summer and fall of 1944 was that a doctrine built on exploiting an opponent's inability to think fast enough can itself be outthought. The student, in the end, had grasped something the original architects never fully reckoned with: that speed without sustainability isn't a strategy. It's a countdown.